our next guest has been a part of the family since 1968, since day one of the A's coming west from Kansas City. And tomorrow he will be inducted into the A's Hall of Fame. And if anybody is to be inducted, there's no question, Steve Vucinich, you should be, because you've been a part of the fabric of the Oakland Athletics since day one. And now that you've retired, wow, what an honor.
It really is. Like I said, I've been here since '68. I always thought once we established a Hall of Fame, which was long, long overdue, I would eventually get in and be honored, but I didn't expect it to be this soon, first year out of retirement. But it's a special feeling. I mean, going in with the elite group that I'm going in with, the people that are already in there, it's so special, especially for, you talk about just a sock and jock man who can get honored this way.
A sock and jock man. I love it. But it's like you could go in really with any era because you would have worked with any of the players. But there is something special for you in your life, let alone your career, going in with Ray and Sal and Joe and what those 70s teams meant to you personally.
Absolutely. I mean, we won 3 World Series in a row on a team that's put together by Charlie Finley, and he did a great job through the draft and free agents. And to see those guys come back to go into the Hall, me be a part of going in when they go in. Like I said, it's an elite group. Guys that meant a lot to me. And then Eric Chavez going in. Unfortunately, he won't be here tomorrow. But him going in, too, and seeing his career rise from the time he was a number 1 draft choice, at age 19 being an all-star in the Cal League, which was almost unheard of at the time, and his storied career here in Oakland. So these are all my people. They're all my people, and guys that I've been around with, and parts of 7 decades here, they said. I didn't even realize that until somebody mentioned that this morning. But it's really an honor, especially for somebody that never put on a uniform except to shag balls down the left field line.
You're just a sock and jock guy.
Just a sock and jock guy. That's the standard line.
Why did you hang him up? Now that you've had time, why?
There are things I want to do when I'm healthy. I just got back from an Alaskan cruise. We were gone 15 days altogether, 11 on the cruise and a trip up to Denali. The things I want to do. You know what? The job got more and bigger, and that's why with my successors, they've kind of spread it out a little bit. The hours were long. That's what killed me. I won't say killed me, but that was a detriment. It was just the hours. I'd wake up, have a half hour at home, read a newspaper if you can get one delivered, and a cup of coffee, and I'm at the ballpark. And I got a half hour at home after the game's over. So it was the hours, it was long hours. And, 54 years, that was enough. I just turned 70 a couple of weeks ago, and I won't say I had enough. I love the game. I watch every game on TV if I can. Got the MLB app and listen to you guys, and you guys get me through my workouts on my cardiac rehab every day.
Me getting all angry.
Yeah. What's funny is I'll have the earbuds in and I'll be listening, and they monitor you with a little heart monitor, and they can tell over there, and all of a sudden the girl come on, "What are you laughing at?" I said, if I tell you, you wouldn't believe it. But it was time. It was time to move on, and I've seen too many people in my position die in this job and never move on and do the things that they wanted to or deserve to do. So it was time.
You talk about leaving the position, but you can't leave the organization because, as I said, it's family. And for you, this is whether you're officially working for the A's or not. I mean, this is a big part of your life and your love. I don't think there's ever going to be a time you can turn it off. Absolutely.
It's just like somebody said, "You watch our games. Why do you care?" I said, you just can't turn the faucet off. This is my life. These are my guys. You're one of my guys. Everybody here, I see them every day during the season, and I'm getting words passed on to me. I think I mentioned on TV the other day from writers in Chicago, from writers in Baltimore. So they're a family. This is my family, and that's why. I still got to be a part of it. Got to be around.
And the game changed so much during your time. I mean, you think of like the late 60s. Everybody wants to talk about the 70s. You got to remember, these guys came over from Kansas City. So you've got a young Reggie Jackson. You've got a young Rick Monday. I just saw a picture the other day. It's Joe DiMaggio talking to Rick Monday, Reggie Jackson, and like having just saw a picture of Rick Monday now, I think, because of Vin Scully passing away, I think Monday's like 76 right now. And just think about a young Reggie, and there's Joe DiMaggio in the uniform. I mean, if you go back just what baseball players were like in the late 60s to what they are today, you saw all those changes.
Absolutely. And I know that picture because they've run that a lot lately. John Donaldson's in that picture, Joe Rudy. The respect they had for listening to Joe DiMaggio, and that was not a staged photo. That was Joe talking and everybody just kind of gathering in. Because Joe had never been in uniform with a big league club other than going to spring training occasionally with the Yankees back in Florida. And so when the team moved out of here, Charlie hired him as a vice president. It was more of a headline position, and he could sit in on some negotiations. I know he sat in on the talks with the Atlantic Richfield people, which was a predecessor for Arco, and they're a big sponsor here, and he sat in on a couple of those and probably sealed the deal. But that was a great photo. I saw those guys come up. You know that these guys were going to be good, that they were putting it together. They're all played together in the minor leagues. They're like brothers. They're like family. They knew each other so well, and you could see them gel. In 68, that was the first time they'd played over 500 balls since Charlie Finley had owned the club back in Kansas City. And then in 69, we're expected to contend, had some injuries in there, and it didn't happen, but you could see the foundation being laid. And the only guy that it was really traded away, and he was traded for a vital piece, was Rick Monday, traded the Cubs for Kenny Holtzman, another starter that we needed at the time, and that kind of solidified our pitching staff for 72.
Yeah, some of the pictures that you had in your office, one of my favorites you and I used to always joke about was Colonel Sanders. The late great Colonel Sanders in the white. Was that a tuxedo? What was that? Or a suit? But Colonel Sanders always had the little black bow tie and the white suit, or I guess it wouldn't be a tuxedo. It would have been a suit.
Yeah, that was a real Colonel Sanders.
Real.
There have been so many imposters over the years for commercials and things, but that was a real. And Kentucky Fried Chicken was a big sponsor then. They catered food in the press lounge occasionally and had some advertising here. And so he was making a goodwill tour around and came out. And I was fortunate to have a picture. I said, that is probably the most, they said that's the most recognizable person in the world next to Muhammad Ali.
Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders.
And that is a sad note here on A's Cast Live. But there was also the picture with Joe D in there. What was it like, Joe DiMaggio, when he started walking around in an A's uniform, that the other American League teams would see Joe DiMaggio in an A's uniform? That had to be like, wow.
Well, Joe was an icon then. The movie The Graduate had just come out, and as a Simon Garfunkel sang the song, and so he was.
Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?
So he was resurrected again, and then coming into uniform with the A's, everybody wanted to talk to Joe because he had not been around. He hadn't been to Detroit. He hadn't been to the White Sox.
He was real private.
Absolutely, very private person. And so he was traveling with the ball club, and it wasn't like us later on, but it was almost like a rock show because he was the man. Reggie wasn't the man yet. Campy wasn't the man. Joe DiMaggio was the man in an Oakland A's uniform.
Was he Mr. Because Joe DiMaggio obviously didn't. I was born in '72. Me knowing baseball history, Joe DiMaggio the great, but Joe DiMaggio to me as a little boy was Mr. Coffee.
And you want to tell
was he Mr. Coffee yet?
He was. That was coming on, and I'll tell you a little secret. He didn't even drink coffee.
Are you serious?
He had a Mr. Coffee
Do not
machine.
tell me Arnold Palmer did not use Pennzoil. Arnold Palmer used Pennzoil oil, right? Please tell me.
I'm sure he did.
And he drank Arnold Palmer's.
But Joe was a tea guy.
Really?
So we used the Mr. Coffee to make him hot water for his tea. And not to say before I knew him, and maybe when he was a player, he drank coffee, but he didn't at that time when he was with us.
One of the things I always love talking about, having read the Last Dynasty and the Charlie Finley book, and it just does not get its due. And Charlie gets a bad rap. This is a guy, however you feel business-wise, he made a lot of money, so bought a team. It's his team. But he ran the team from Chicago. He won 3 straight World Series, but they win the playoffs 71-75. He did all of that from another town, from a rotary phone with a cord, folks, not a cell phone. He ran a baseball team from a phone in Chicago that won 3 straight World Series and is one of the great runs in the history of baseball.
And when he was trying to sneak out here, we would find out, and then all of a sudden the guys that know in the front office would put their ties back on. And here comes Charlie. And Charlie says, well, I like the way you guys wear ties every day. But they didn't. But Charlie would be on the phone all the time. He'd call and complain about a $5 phone bill, about a $5 laundry bill, and spend $6 on a phone call back in the days before it was cheap like it is now. Yeah, he ran it. He had his people here that he talked to. He was the general manager. He was making all the trades. He had some scouts that he would rely on, just get some information, and he'd maybe call scouts of another team who would say, oh, great, I got a call from Charlie Finley. Yeah, he asked about this player. Next thing you know, we trade for him, and the guy becomes a better than average player. He didn't like spending money, except for players at the beginning, and then the arbitration process kind of wore on him, and he decided to bail out. It was a good time. But he understood baseball and talent, and he spent a lot of money in signing bonuses before the draft and once the draft started in 65. So he was a pretty good, smart baseball man, considering he made all his money in insurance.
Well, you know, a lot of people, the way he's looked at when you say about being cheap, but now how we know the game has gone to where the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, they all went to salary caps. Why? Because it works and it's better for the game. The problem that we have now in baseball, where you have the teams that have a ton of money, teams that don't, it's just it's such an odd balance in the game of baseball. Charlie said that would happen, and he was right.
Charlie thought it would happen sooner than it did. The discrepancy now is where our payrolls are at $47 million, and a couple of clubs are 270, 280. That's a big difference. But how about in 1990, after we'd won the World Series in '89, we had the highest payroll in baseball.
Yeah.
1990 we did. I mean, it was maybe $27, $28 million. But it showed that we could compete. Now the discrepancy is just so far apart.
Well, the revenue streams, Charlie didn't know what they were going to be, but he just knew at some point that certain teams wouldn't be able to compete. We didn't know at that point the internet, everything was about attendance then. We didn't know about cable, new ballparks, all the money you're going to get from merchandise, what you're going to get from the app. I mean, the pie would grow bigger, but the bigger markets had a chance to make more than the other teams because it just wasn't about attendance anymore.
Absolutely. And they used to say your break-even point was $1 million in attendance. No, that's not even close. You got Kansas City and St. Louis and Milwaukee. They don't have big TV contracts. We have a bigger one here in Oakland. But the whole revenue sources from the internet, MLB.com, the TV thing, the national TV, that's what's paying all the bills. Charlie was smart enough to realize that at that time, it was time for him to get out. And he did. He sold the club, who, we tried to move it 3 times to Denver. He mentioned New Orleans, and Marvin Davis, a billionaire from Denver, wanted to buy the club and move it there. And I mean, I think I've told you, Chris, there was one time we opened the season in Anaheim, and Charlie Finley came in and said, don't rent apartments in Oakland because by the second homestand, you'll be playing in Denver. And that had been unprecedented, a move during the season after you start in one city. Wow. I mean, the Mariners, the Seattle Pilots moved to be the Milwaukee Brewers, and they did it with about 3 weeks left in spring training. That's as close as that's ever come. But, the club almost moved, and the Coliseum in the city of Oakland and County of Alameda had an ironclad lease on the A's, and they came close to letting them out so they could get money on a buyout, and then they could afford to do skyboxes here. And that's what Al Davis wanted, because in the skyboxes for football, you don't have to share that revenue.
Yes.
You just share the price of the ticket. So that's what Al Davis said. He thought he needed to compete with free agency on the horizon in the NFL. And they thought they could make that deal and keep the Raiders. And there were a couple of attorneys down in Oakland that sat out all weekend figuring a way out and figured out. And it's been written a long time ago that you could not directly appropriate that money that they would have got, which would have been $4 million from the buyout of the A's lease, and put it into the Coliseum. You could not directly do that. and that saved the A's for Oakland. Charlie Finley was smart enough. Hey, his cousin Carl said, let's hire Billy Martin. You won't have to pay him much because the Yankees are paying him, and let's instill some interest in the A's. And this is a young club that was coming up at the time with the Dwayne Murphys and those guys, and hired Billy, and all of a sudden it took off, and it made the Haas family in San Francisco realize that this is a treasure for not only Oakland and the East Bay, but all of Northern California. And so they got the interest and purchased the club, and the rest is history. We've been here since.
Wildest times in your tenure, which basically is all Oakland A's history, except this year. You won't be able to count this year. Yeah, you are. You're still around all that. Wildest times, is it Billy Martin?
Probably
Billy Ball.
Billy Ball. You know why? Because it saved baseball. We started winning in 1980 with Billy coming in, and like I said, we had a nucleus of a good young club, and people all of a sudden got interested. And after drawing like 310,000 in 1979,
310.
I mean, we used to do that in a homestand in the 80s, but so we got some interest in there, and
it's like arena football.
Yeah, exactly. So in 1980, we drew like 800,000 or something, and that's when the interest of the Haas family, as I mentioned. But Billy, being an East Bay person, and I'd go out with Billy in the afternoon, off season, and we'd stop here, stop there, and everybody loved Billy from his Oakland Oaks days, remembering him from his Yankee days as not only as a manager but as a player too. Yeah. So that was quite wild times because we were saved for Oakland. I mean, I'm born and raised up the street here, and I felt great accomplishment and proud that this club was going to stay here.
Are you shocked? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, that the club is still here playing in the Oakland Coliseum, and it's 2022.
Well, if you take me back to 1977, 78, 79, yes. But when you see the success we had in the 80s with attendance, the interest in the A's, that I'm not shocked. I mean, this Vegas thing kind of wears on me. What are we going to do? I don't know. Something's got to be done here. But it's a tough call what we're going to do. We drew all those crowds in Oakland in the 80s, and I think people forget we were going against Candlestick Park. Coliseum was a better place to go to the game, easier to get to, more fun. The Giants had some bad ball clubs then. I'm talking about mid-'80s.
And literally the worst weather in the history of professional sports, Candlestick Park.
You drive on 101, whether you're going north or south. As soon as you get to the fog, you go east, and there's Candlestick. So
it's horrible.
But so we went against Candlestick Park and some bad Giant teams, and that really helped elevate us as far as interest and fan base and everything. But what's going on now, I don't know what's going to happen. I just hope it's for the best of the organization and we get back to competing all the time.
Money started getting big in baseball. I remember when Nolan Ryan was the first $1 million player, right? And you're like, wow, a guy's making $1 million a year. I'm assuming it was sometime in the 80s. Ricky, Canseco, we start seeing that $3-4 million a year. When was the first time for you, because you're dealing with the players, wants, needs, dealing with them constantly. When did you start going, wow, these guys are really making some generational wealth?
When one of them would drop a paycheck and I'd pick it up and I say, God, you're only making that much. And it was clearing like $28,000 for 2 weeks. That's when it kind of hit me. But, as part of the game, it evolved. I mean, we all started making more money too, because the players were making more money, and the ownerships were fun and took care of us. But the players making that much money, it's like they didn't go from 300,000 to $1 million. I mean, it was a gradual increase, so it wasn't that much of a shock. But I hear people now say, God, they're going to pay Trout $40 million a year. They're going to pay this guy that much. I said, when's the last time you saw a player put a gun to an owner's head and say, sign this? They're not forcing them to pay him that much, but that's what the market bears, so they have to pay him.
And that's what I said last week on A's Cast Live. When was the trading deadline?
Second.
The second, August 2nd. It was Tuesday.
So I said this I think it would have been Tuesday's show. I said, you know what the San Diego Padres did? The San Diego Padres just exposed everybody, because what the Padres showed is the money's there. If you're going to take on, even though they were able to get rid of Hosmer, but the fact that you got Machado, Tatis, now Soto, and what he's going to get in arbitration, let alone if you get a big deal, it just shows even a small market team like the Padres how much money they're getting. They're just willing to spend it.
Absolutely. Their ownership is pretty forceful that way by letting AJ Preller go ahead and speak. And I think they're averaging 37,000 fans
That's
a game.
before Soto.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, like I said, no players put a gun to an owner's head before he signed that big contract.
No doubt about it. And it's going to be just to watch our game go. If there was something that, because people need to realize you were always in the dugout for all these games. If there's something that you could see, good, bad change, just a change as someone who loves watching the game and you've watched the game evolve, what change would you like to see in the game?
Well, that's a tough one. The big statistical thing, the knowledge that you get, you might as well use the stats if you've got them. So I have no bitch about positioning fielders in certain spots. I mean, I love seeing a ball hit, and I thought, oh, God, that's a base hit for somebody, and boom, there's a second baseman 10 feet behind second base, and he's turned into a normal ground out. So I don't know if positioning is something that they need to change or looking at. I've heard rumors are that no infielder could be on the outfield grass starting next year. I don't think that's come to full play yet. But as far as a change, I don't know, we've got bigger clubs now. I mean, bigger rosters. Some of the new rules have just baffled me. I mean, not only be able to you have to face 3 hitters unless the inning is ended. So the rule changes, maybe they're good. I don't know. They haven't been proven to me yet. But the big change to me in my whole tenure has been uniforms.
Lots of uniforms.
Lots of uniforms. Some teams have 8, 9 different jerseys. It's unbelievable.
Lots of uniforms, lots of hats, lots of changes. Let's end on this, as obviously the big deal is tomorrow. Today, though, also a big deal, honoring Ray Fosse. You've known Ray Fosse for, my God, since the 70s. Very good friend of yours. Unfortunately, he is not here with us. Just what do you miss about Ray, and what's a great story you could give us on the way out about Ray?
You know, when we made the trade for Ray in the spring training of 73, we traded Dave Duncan and George Hendrick and got Ray. And at that time, there were 2 big league catchers that were well known. I mean, the best in the National League was Johnny Bench, and it was well known that the best in the American League was Ray Fosse, although Thurman Munson was evolving at the time. So he comes over, and I thought, God, this is really a nice fit for us, a nice piece. And being the nicest guy in the world, always want to interact with the clubhouse guys all over baseball. He didn't go up to the press box as soon as he got to the ballpark. He went to the clubhouse and talked to the visiting clubhouse guys, maybe the home clubhouse guys. His fairness to everybody in the game, including fans, I will never forget that. He was the most personable guy that there is. I mean, he loved the game. Nobody loved the Oakland A's more than me, except for maybe Ray Fosse.
One thing I like to tell people all the time, and you know what Ray Fosse meant to me in so many different ways, but just from a professional standpoint, when we launched A's Cast, there was a lot of people who were, what the hell is this, right? You remember when we launched it, they're like, what are we doing? Right? There was a lot of people who didn't believe, and they would lie to me and say, this is great, and then I'd hear what they were really saying, and I knew. And I've kept my mouth shut over the years now that we're the #1 podcast in all of Major League Baseball.
Those were all the old school people.
Yeah, they didn't. You know who loved it was Ray. Ray would come over hey, Townie, what do you say? He'd come over and he'd put his headphones on. And in the offseason, Ray Fosse every single week would come on for a half hour. Yeah. Ray loved A's Cast. He loved the idea. He'd be listening at home on the app. He loved it. He was the one guy who went, this is great. This is going to be great for the organization. While everybody else was like, oh, my God, what are they doing? Ray Fosse was the one that really backed us.
That's amazing. It's good to know that he was progressive. He understood that this is the way to go, and maybe it extend his career a little bit too. I'm not saying that he did that in a selfish way, but he understood all the facets of broadcasting, of the media, and did a good job with it.
Well, how about this guy coming right here? Andrew Bailey's coming up here, a guy that obviously you knew for many years. That's an A's Hall of Famer right there.
Well, welcome to Vucinich.
Andrew Bailey here, Giants pitching coach, of course.
One of my favorite guys. I text him all the time, don't I?
I can't follow this one. This is a tough act to follow.
You know, he's going into the A's Hall of Fame tomorrow.
Congratulations. I did not. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very, very well deserved. That's
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. By the way, are we going to have dry eyes tomorrow during the speech?
You know, you said that. I did pretty well last year on the.
You choked up a little bit.
I don't remember that, but anyway, I hope not. Maybe I make 20,000 people cry. I don't know, but not me.
Be great stuff. Congratulations. If anybody earned it, it's you.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Cody.
Enjoy tomorrow.
Andrew, good
Congrats.
to see you.
Good to see you, man, always.